Hello everyone, this is Hank. I'm back for another video. Today we are going to continue to talk about the orange menu items. In the previous video we already finished talking about the custom function 1 exposure, and today we're going to talk about custom function 2 autofocus. Okay, this whole autofocus thing revolves around the servo mode, okay, especially the first three. So before we delve into the first three, let's kind of set the frame of mind, basically to set everybody thinking of along the same line. So here we are going to talk about autofocus tracking sensitivity as the first one, and this has to do with servo. And when we use servo, we usually use it to track moving objects or objects that are most likely is going to move. Okay, with that frame of mindset in mind, the first one here, if you look on the scale there, on the left with a minus sign is set locked on. In the middle is set 0, meaning that it's neutral. On the right it says responsive. Alright? So in this scenario, two things going on. You set it at default. Okay? The camera is going to do what it does. Program to do, and so it's like it's kind of responsive, but then it's kind of not. It's in the middle, right? What does locked on and responsive mean, you may ask? Okay, so take the scenario like you are tracking a football player, right? So a football player is running. You achieve initial focus. Now you're tracking this player by moving the camera, panning after this player, right? Okay. Couple of scenarios. Depending on what tracking mode you're using, or autofocus mode. Okay, most people use like a spot with surrounding points. I personally use the spot with 8 surrounding points. I call it a 9-point focus. So I would use that to track the moving football player, right? So now what if the football player is moving too fast for my panning and it is get out of my 9 points? Then I would lose focus, correct? Okay. Now this one, depending on how you set it, is going to help you or not. Okay, the way that I have it set now is -2. That is my personal choice. Now what this means is like even if the football players run out of my 9 points completely, since I choose -2, it's gonna maintain locked on this guy, and it won't let go, and that is what I want. Once I start tracking something like a bird or a person, I don't want to lose it because the moment happens so quick. Once you lose focus, that's it, you lose the picture. So you don't ever want to lose focus. So I would choose -2 so that I maintain a locked on to it. So what if I set it to, instead of -2 to +2? What is the difference? The difference is like say the football player is running, the opposite side is chasing him, right? And this guy's faster and he's gaining it, and he just happened to be in front, closer to the camera, right? As soon as he get into frame, guess what happened? Get into my 9 points. The camera, okay, if you set it to 0 or +1 or +2, the camera is going to switch. It's very responsive. It senses a change. it's going to switch autofocus. So it switches to the other player. Depending on whether or not that is what you want, that would affect your choice, whether or not you do -2, -1, 0, or +1 or +2. That is the scenario. Okay, so you want to switch, readily switch to the new target, then you choose plus. If you wanted to stay on the same target, even though the football player that you're tracking now is behind the new guy, you're still tracking him. And then you do a -2. Okay, hope that makes sense. Okay, scenario number 2. Now let's assume you're tracking this football player, right? And he's moving at a certain velocity. All of a sudden he stops and he pivots and he runs the other way, right? So the sudden deceleration is usually severe enough that you're going to lose focus lock because the camera doesn't know what to do. And of course, when you're tracking it, you may not be able to arrest your tracking. So therefore, now you're going to lose lock for sure. Okay. Now this one, the setting here allows you to, okay, default again is at 0. So it's doing both. It will tolerate a certain deceleration, acceleration, but not that much. Now, so if you choose plus, it means that even though this thing accelerate quickly, it will not change to another target. It's going to keep tracking that same target that it's already locked on. Okay, so you don't lose lock because the subject slows down or speeds up. That is basically, like I said, once I got the bird or a person in focus, I'm not going to ever let go. Okay, if I want to let go to another one, I release the shutter button or the focus button, and then I re-engage it to refocus. But as long as I keep that focus button pressed down, I want to track that same target. So with that mindset in mind, I would set it to +1 or +2. Now +2 is a little bit too much in most cases because you don't get everything for free. So you go it on the plus sign is gonna continue to track it, but in return, you know, it's losing efficiency. So +1 is a compromise. It's better, and that is what I would choose for me. Now, on the other way around, right? So if you do a -2 or -1, as soon as this target changes velocity, the camera is going to switch over to another target. So whether or not that's what you want, that remains to be seen, but it's not for me, right? Okay, hope that makes sense. Now the third one has to do with the autofocus point. Auto switching, meaning what? So this scenario is kind of the opposite of the other one. The other one, like the target is moving. Now let's say the target is not moving. I got it locked on, and all of a sudden this guy started moving. Or like if you photograph an active kid, the kid is just like fidgeting around, start moving all over the place, right? And it's moving out of my 9 points, if that is a method I'm using, right? The default is at 0. So at 0, it will tolerate a certain movement, but not by much. Now if I go to 1, it will continue to track that subject, even though the subject is moving. Okay, 2 is more aggressive than 1. That's the idea. So again, I got something locked. I'm not giving up. So therefore, I set this to +2. Make sure that, hey, I locked on to that target and I'm not going to let go. So that would affect how you decide to set this. And of course, once you set it, you got to play around with it to see if it actually works for you, right? So your mileage may vary. Every single one of us have different needs, and we have different preferences. I just show you mine. All right. Okay, number 4 has to do with lens drive when AF impossible. Now, you probably don't know what this is all about, and I don't blame you. Now, you run into this only if you have a really great big super telephoto lens, and then you may get into this, because I personally have a 600mm f4, and it's big and it's heavy, right? And once in a while, you focus it, you try to focus it, and the camera would go the wrong way. So you basically get it more blurry, and then, okay, so this is where it comes in. It's very important. Now, the default is that it may go the wrong way, but then eventually it'll come back and go to the right way, and then you will get focus, right? But that means that you're going to use up a lot of battery, and you lose a lot of time. So in that case, if you don't want it to do that, and then you choose number 1, stop focus search. Meaning that if it goes the wrong way, it just stops. Okay, I think it's designed so that, okay, everything stops. Then you turn the camera off and turn it back on, and then it'll reset your autofocus, and then you don't have to grind the motors, and you don't have to expand a bunch of battery for doing that. Now, that is, in theory, it sounds like a good idea. Now, in practice, it's not a very good idea, and I'm telling you this out of personal experience. I hated this thing, and of course, Canon recommend you to do that if you have big super telephoto lens, and choose option 1 instead of the default 0. That is what they recommend, but I think that is a pretty bad recommendation, because in real life, what happens, like you're trying to focus on a bird or something. A critical moment is going to happen anytime you're trying to desperately focus on the topic of choice. And you go, and this thing is struggling with focus once in a while. And then all of a sudden it just stops. It's dead. And then you keep pressing the focus button, nothing happens, it just stop dead, because the camera thinks that AF is impossible, because it's happened to focus backwards. And then it just decided to quit. So now you have to turn off the camera and turn it back on. Now, if you do that, it'll work again. It will work okay. However, the critical moment happens within seconds. And if you have to reset your camera like that, you're going to lose it for sure. So, absolutely bad idea. May save you a little battery. Bad idea. You're going to lose a picture that you've been looking for. So it is a good idea to keep it at 0. Focus may be slow. Once in a blue moon, though, it doesn't happen often, but it does happen. You want it to continue to focus regardless. And that would be my advice. Because quite a few people just say, oh my God, like, something's wrong with my lens. Something wrong with my camera. It just stopped working and I have to turn it off and on. And believe it or not, that is what Canon designed it to do. But I don't think it's a really good idea. So just force it to continue to focus. That would be my advice. All right. Now this one, basically, as you know, we have 6 methods of autofocus. Okay. Now one method right in the middle there, the spot. That method, it doesn't let you deselect it, but you can select the other 5 if you don't want. If you don't ever use is a focus mode, and then you can turn it off. Give you an example, right? So in this case, I like to use them all. The only one that I would turn off is the last one there. This one, because I don't use zone AF. You leave it to too much chance. But I use everything else. Let's assume that I don't want to use anything. Of course, I cannot deselect the one in the middle. But let's assume that I only like face tracking. I don't want to use anything else, right? I have to choose the spot because not the spot, but the one in the middle there. I think it's called the point focus. Yeah. Okay. So now I go okay. Now if I go and I start shooting, and I can press the Q set button, and then I get to choose my focus method. And because now I only have to cycle through 2. So I save a lot of time. I don't have to cycle through 6, right, to choose what I want. So I can do it very quickly. So it's up to you, and that is what it's for. Now, as I mentioned, I'm kind of greedy. I use them all except for one. So I'm going to select most of it, leave that one out, and then press OK. That's my personal choice. Okay, number 6. Number 6 has to do with orientation of the AF point. Okay. Now, vertical, horizontal, what does that mean? The default is same for both. So basically, most of us shoot with a horizontal position, right? But once in a while, you flip the camera up to do it vertically. In 2 scenarios that I use the vertical, your mileage again may vary. 2 scenarios I use it. Number 1 is like if I take a portrait picture, let's say half a body, and I would do a vertical to take a picture of people. Now, horizontally, normally, my AF point to start out with is right in the middle. That's most of the time I use it. But when I flip it vertical now, the head is usually up higher, not in the middle. So therefore, my focus point is the wrong point when I do the vertical, right? So Canon, knowing that, it gives you the option of doing a separate AF point. Okay, so when you do vertical, you have a separate AF point. When you do a horizontal, you have a different one, and that makes sense. So that's what I would recommend that you do it. Choose that. Right? Okay. Number 7, the last but not least, has to do with the face tracking. What do you want with the initial AF point for face tracking? Now the default is automatic, and what that means, okay, is that it'll grab a face. So when I press the AF point, it focuses, right? Either the face or the eye. Boom, done, right? Now, going back to this, I have a choice of actually telling it that, hey, I want you to, instead of just grabbing a random face, start out at a particular one for me. Okay, and that is, I can manually set it. Okay, for example, give you an example. Let's go back on automatic. No, not automatic. Automatic you don't get to choose. So you got to choose this one first. Say, I choose this one. Okay, so I go over here. Right, so that would be my initial focus point. Okay, I can select it manually, right? Let's say I want it here, just for the sake of example, right? Okay, so now let's get out of here. Okay, so now I always start out with that focus point that I manually set first. Now, you see the unintended consequence here? Unless you always have your subject to where your manually selected point is, and usually in a studio you probably would do that because you would put the model at exactly the same place all the time. Then you can afford to do it, but if you're in the field, that's impossible. Now, this face tracking and this thing refuse to do the face. Defeat the purpose completely, so that, keep that in mind, okay? So that is potential gotcha. It's not helping you, it's hurting. Okay, back here, again, for those of us that switch focus mode a lot. Example of, like, say if you're taking a picture using like a spot focus mode. Okay, but then you want to switch over to face tracking. If you choose number 2, okay, you are basically telling, like, when I switch from one mode to the other, I want you to pick up the manual set autofocus point for the previous mode. So it will take whatever you had before, like say a spot, apply it to the face tracking. Now you're facing basically the same issue with the choice number 1 if you're not careful. Unless that spot is the precise spot where your model is going to be at, it's not going to grab some random face. So it actually hurt you more than help. I tried this thing before. I hated it. So my recommendation, just do automatic. Okay. So when you get into it, bam, it grabbed the first face. You don't like that face, you press the button here, the move button, and then you move to the different face. That's a lot better way to do it. Alright. Now this one, it doesn't like the glasses. Sometimes it's see-through, but this one, it doesn't recognize the eyes because of the dark glasses. So it doesn't do the eye. But because you get the idea. Going back here, reset. Alright, so I think we are done. Oops. Alright, we have finished the whole thing. Yay! Well, I'm sorry, this is another long, drawn out video, and I tried to talk as fast as I could. I'm sorry, it's still long, but hopefully you get something out of it. I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and I will see you in another video. Thank you very much.